Okay, we're just going to do a quick run through of our metal fence project at one of our rentals. And this was when we bought the place. This is what about 200 feet worth of fence ended up looking like. A lot of it was rotted, it's falling down. Neighbors were pretty annoyed with it. So rather than rebuilding a wood fence here in Tucson, which is never a long-term prospect, we decided to put up a metal fence. So when we finished, we ended up with something that looked like this, which is probably a little more industrial than it needs to be, a little over engineered. We learned a few things along the way. This was our first metal fence that we've put up with our fabulous Fancy Pants gate. So before I get started on the pros and cons and the steps we took and what we learned, I wanted to show a couple of different things that I'd looked at. I tromped around the larger Tucson area and looked at a lot of fences, got yelled at by a lot of people to get out of their yard with my camera. But you can see this is a technique that a lot of the commercial places use. This is 1x1 stock. Those are 2x2 vertical posts in the ground, and they had larger posts on the end and around gates, and they tack weld it to the corrugated metal. This is typically lower gauge metal. The corrugated metal is kind of more floppy, you know, and they run two horizontal brace bars and then just butt weld it, and then just run it right down the outside proud of the post. It goes up quick. It doesn't take as much metal as we used. You know, speed is the name of the game for these commercial places throwing up fences all over town. And it doesn't have a great finished look, so we didn't want to do that. One that we did like that was on the other side of town, again, they have smaller stock, smaller vertical posts other than at the end and around gates. In this case, they screwed it from the other side. They used self-tapping metal screws. And again, they went with two posts, and they had a nice topper. This is called a J channel. I've got, it just snaps right over the top. But if you're going to your local metal supplier, ask for a J channel. That's what that is. From the other side, looks like this. You can see it's a little shorter on this side, and longer on the other side. It's just folded over, and it stays up nicely by itself. It stays up by friction. You can screw it or tack weld it, but then you end up having to deal with having to take it off if you need to replace a panel. So that's bad. One of the things we liked about this is it's all rustable. This is heavier gauge steel. It doesn't flex, and we think it looks real nice when it's finished. It's nice rusting sequence here. They went ahead and sprayed it with chemicals, which we don't want to do. But it'll rust, you know, go through one monsoon season around here, and it'll look like that. All right, so back to our project. You know, ended up taking the fence down. You guys probably don't need a lot of help with how to take a fence down. I did want to note, though, the unexpected. For whatever reason, most of the posts along the street side, about 8 or 9 of them, had this enormous amount. I mean, that's at least 150 pounds worth of concrete had been poured over other footings over the years. Did not expect this. I just used my farm jack. I expected to pull them up. You know, the old 50 pounds of concrete on the bottom. It just pops right out, and you move on with life. Yeah, everything's not necessarily easy. So there you go. Expect the unexpected. We ended up buying 14 gauge, 3-inch by 3-inch posts, which we used everywhere. And they come in 24-foot sections. So I used my Evolution dry saw to go ahead and cut those into 8-foot sections. You can pay them to cut it up for you, but I was saving money. And in the background there, those are 1.5 by 1.5 inch 14 gauge that I'm going to use for the cross bracing. So we'll see that as we go. And I obviously I cut that up as I go because it's going to be different for each one. So word of caution, I always call 811. They are very efficient. Although the power guys came out and marked everything, the sewer, the water, Comcast, all those people. It's free and they're very fast. I mean, I think within 3 days, every single one of the utilities was marked. So then I've run my string, doing my corners. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on that. It's just standard fence stuff. I do recommend, especially when you're working by yourself, spend a little money and go get a nice auger. You can get those handheld ones, or maybe get a friend and do them. But something like this, that you tow behind your vehicle, it's worth it. And I wasn't able to get down to the 2 feet on all of them. Some of the dirt around here gets really hard, and it'll just spin. So I had to use San Angelo bars to get down the last, sometimes 6-10 inches that I wanted to get. But this got me a good chunk of the way there, and it got me there pretty quick. So yeah, I recommend it. So standard, putting posts in. I'm using clamps here. Just 2 chunks of 2x4s with bolts. Tighten them together so you can get them lined up. If you can see, I've got levels on the posts there. This is going to be where a gate's at, so I'm being extra fussy about making sure that the posts are the exact same height and are exactly parallel. It's you definitely want your gates to be looking sharp. And snap a good line and stick to it when you dig, and you definitely want to make a nice straight line. With a metal fence like this, especially the way we're doing it, where you're not going to see the posts from the outside, it's just going to be one long contiguous run of corrugated metal with a topper. If it's zigzagging, it's going to really advertise itself. So spend a little time to make sure you get a nice straight line. So in my case, what I'm doing is I'm cutting the 1.5 by 1.5 inch 14 gauge tubing to fit inside my posts. Now this is more work for sure, and you gotta be doing measuring and cutting and whatnot. You can see how the guys that were running proud along the outside, and they're just butt welding those 1x1 stock and just whipping around. They're going to be done a lot quicker. But we thought this looked a lot nicer. It's and it allows us. We want to do other things on the inside. We're probably going to put up lattice for people that want to do vines and bike racks, and we're probably going to hook up to some of these. We'll hook up aircraft cable up to under the eaves, so you can do Roman shade treatments that are very heavy duty. Got a lot of wind here around Tucson, so when you do something like that, you definitely want to make sure it's strong. So having 1.5 inch stock across the top gives us options to do that, which is one of the reasons why we went a little heavier than we probably needed to do. We did 3. We were concerned about the wind loads. Fences do get knocked down around here, and I have seen some weaker metal fences with thinner gauge corrugated metal buckle, get creased in the middle. So we wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to happen to us. In the fullness of time, now that we've done this, we probably could have gotten away with just the 2, but we wanted to go 3. We wanted to be real close to the ground in case tenants have dogs. I don't want dogs, pushing on the bottom and flaring it out and whatnot. So all in all, I recommend those big magnets there holding it in place. Those are very handy, and they hold a tremendous amount of weight. I didn't have any problems holding even fairly long runs of the 1.5 by 1.5 14 gauge metal. Get it up there, get it level, tack weld it in, and go to town. So this is just rinse, lather, repeat. Nothing too terribly technical there. And when you're done, it kind of looks like a cattle pen. About this time, all my neighbors came over to inspect my work, and so I met a lot of people from the neighborhood that I didn't know before, so that was kind of handy. And yeah, in case you want to feel better about yourself, here you go. When I started, trying to get the temperature and the speed. I had practiced at home and I thought I had it all dialed in, and I was having problems with my metal feed. Yeah, those are not good looking welds. As things got going, I got better. I was actually thinking of going and grinding these down and making them all shiny and smooth, and no, I'm not doing that. As my welding mentor BK told me, if it bonds, it's beautiful. So we went with that. Once it's up, we then go ahead and put the corrugated metal. This is weatherable. All the metal here we're doing, none of it's stainless, of course. And it's all intended to rust, surface rust. And it's a good looking thing. It's pretty heavy gauge. Each of those sheets is quite a bit heavier than the typical corrugated metal you would get at like Home Depot. So I got mine at my local metal supplier, Santarina Steel. And I'm screwing them in with self-tapping screws. And it does take a little bit of effort to get those things to bite into the 14 gauge. But it's a good strong finish. We used them with the rubber gaskets on them because you don't want it to rattle. You want it to be a nice tight fit, and you get a good wind whipping, and you don't want that because that'll just telegraph right into the apartment. It's not good. But one thing to note on the corner there, we ended up doing you can see the end curve, so it's curving down on both sheets. And it makes a fairly nice corner there. You could see other styles where if the post had been visible and they had done the cross bracing on the other side of the post, and they would then set the corrugated metal so that it would butt up against the post. You can see how that would be a very different look. And you're not really worrying about how those corners are looking, but we decided we wanted all the posts to be non-visible from the outside. That was the look we were going for. One note, around your gates, definitely don't screw anything anywhere near it until you're done putting your gates up, because let's go. You want to be able to clamp your. In this case, I'm using a metal kit. I'll put a link to it. It's very simple. It's fairly inexpensive. It's super easy to use. And we wanted to do wood gates. So this was really kind of the perfect vehicle for that. If we were going to continue the metal look all the way across, I would have just gotten some 1x1 tubing and just welded up a gate. But in this case, we wanted to kind of break up the industrial look with a wooden gate. And it's nice to be able to get in behind your corrugated metal. So if you screwed all that down, this would be a whole lot more difficult. So we get it, you size it, you cut the boards, you put it in there, and you get it nice and parallel. And boom, you put you screw it on. You can also just get regular metal and weld it, but it was easier just to screw everything in. We were already in the self-tapping screw mode. So we went ahead and did that, and you can see from the outside, put a little bling on it. It's a really nice look. The tenants really like this. When they came out, they were like, "Oh, we're really glad you guys did wood gates," because we have gates on the back as well, and it kind of breaks up that long, metal industrial look. So I kind of recommend that, but to each his own. And you can see we also put a topper. That's the J channel, which actually, when you're changing elevations as you go, which you're going to do when you're doing a 160 foot long run, it's going to change levels on you. It's nice. It just gives it a nice, clean, finished look when you do that. And you can see on the edge we did 45-degree cuts, so we were able to butt them up, and it makes a nice clean corner. This is especially true because from the front of the property to the back of the property, we lost about 14 inches in height. So we were dropping as we went, ½ inch on each panel for some of those sequences. And it looks kind of jagged. And then you put that J channel on and it just smooths it right out. When you're driving by, it's not even obvious at all. It's really nice, clean look. I recommend it. It's an extra expense. So if you want to bail on it, bail on it. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful. I really had difficulty finding information about how to put up a metal fence when I went about this, hence me stomping around people's property with my camera. So hopefully this helps you not trespass and be successful on your next metal fence project. Thanks.